If we could have the second panel come up, Mr. Fausto Alvarado, Ms. Lourdes Flores, Pedro Cateriano, and Fernando Oliveira. Right. Okay. Who's the person from Argentina here? Are we doing them separately? Could I ask you each to stand, raise your right hand? Okay. You want to put the headphone on, then you understand. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Yes.
Would you each identify yourself, please? State your name and your title or position, and bring the microphone close to you. Would you begin over here? State your name and your title.
I am Fausto Alvarado. I am a deputy. I am a member of the investigating committee on the illicit enrichment of former President. I am Fernando Oliveira. I'm president of the investigative committee of the Parliament of Peru, the Chamber of Deputies, examining the financial operations in Peru and abroad regarding the former president of Peru, Alan García. I am Lord.
The Commission said.
Excuse me. Pedro Cateriano. I am a deputy and member of the investigative committee regarding the presumed illicit enrichment of former Peruvian President Alan García Pérez.
Now, each of you has identified yourselves in a way that makes a statement about the former president, which is not what we're looking at here. We're looking at the question of BCCI, and I want to know the relationships, but I do not want to know unsubstantiated allegations or, or anything that isn't known as a matter of fact, that isn't supported by document or by testimony. What we really want to know is how BCCI operated in Peru, and to get a sense of what is known as a matter of record about its dealings there. I must ask you in the openings to try to be brief, because we really want to have some time for questions. We're running behind again. We cannot go into the afternoon, and we have Argentina, which we also want to cover afterwards. So the shorter you are with respect to the openings, the more time we'll have to ask some questions. Now, is one person going to speak for you in an opening? Is your chairman going to speak? I gather, Mr. Oliveira, you will be presenting an opening statement.
Así es.
That's correct.
Señor Presidente.
Fine. Well, we look forward to receiving it. And again, I repeat to all of you, we're very appreciative for your patience, and thank you for making this journey.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the U.S. Senate,
Permítanme,
allow me,
como primeras palabras,
as my first words, to express a feeling as a Peruvian, which all of us in the committee feel, and I'm sure almost everybody in the country. It is a feeling of indignation, an enormous concern to see the name of Peru involved in a case of corruption where the eyes of the world have been targeted. Yesterday, we saw the picture which showed how the BCCI operated, and an example of corruption of the central bank was given. This was the Central Bank of Peru, I mean. I have to say, very briefly, that despite the fact that this is a case where corruption of officers of the Reserve Bank of Peru has been demonstrated, it is not representative of what we, the Peruvians, are. The great majority of Peruvians are hardworking and honorable. From their ancestors, the Incas, when they summarized the feelings of Peruvian people by saying Amasua, Amaqueya, Amasua. This means don't be lazy, don't be a liar, and don't be a thief. And I mean by that, that in Peru we live in a democracy where the authorities don't cover up the commission of crimes, and that's why in the Congress of my country investigating committees have been set up to shed light on any commission of crimes or bribes, even up to the highest levels. These commissions, before the U.S. Senate and before the eyes of the world, are bound and determined to shed light on this case. And we have come here with a spirit of mutual cooperation between the two investigations which you are presiding over so well, Senator Kerry, and the investigations being carried on by our investigative committees, because unfortunately we must say that corruption transcends party lines. It does not distinguish as between ideologies. It does not respect frontiers or borders. We can say here that the BCCI are initials not of Bank of Credit and Commerce International, but mean the Bank of Crime and Corruption International. And we have to defeat corruption everywhere, wherever it is, and we have to close ranks and fight together, all of us who fight for the cause of justice. That is why I've come here to
nuestro pedido de colaboración,
buttress our request for collaboration insofar as possible, because we are members of an investigative committee which has to expose
al Congreso del Perú, a la Cámara de Diputados del Perú,
its findings to the Peruvian Parliament, and we will reveal things which can be revealed so that the authorities of the world can support us in our investigations as well.
Tendremos que reservar
Moreover, we have to reserve
averiguaciones
some
que estamos realizando
investigations that are still ongoing and which are still being confirmed or worked on. I will refer fundamentally to the operation of deposits of the International Reserves of Peru in BCCI, in its Panama branch, and the operation of resale of 14 Mirage jets which belong to the state of Peru, and in which BCCI also participated, especially in its London office.
El año
In
1986, el Banco Central de Reserva del Perú
the Central Bank of Peru
en el BCCI
deposited in Panama, in the BCCI, substantial amounts of our international reserves.
Lo hizo
It did so
mediante una decisión aprobada en mayo de 1986.
Or made in May of '86.
Y sucesivamente los depósitos fueron alcanzando
deposits were made reaching substantial amounts,
en algún momento llegaron a superar los 270 millones
even
de dólares.
exceeded $200 million.
Let me just interrupt you there so I can ask a question as we go. The question would be asked by the casual observer, so what? The bank competed. There were other banks that wanted to get into extending a line of credit because this meant money to them. They're in the business of making money. Peru needed an outlet. So what's so strange about that? And I'm just trying to sort of take us down the road here a little bit.
Sí, senador Kerry.
Yes, Senator Kerry.
Yo comprendo, pero le rogaría
I
que
understand, but
brevemente
I
pueda
would
terminar esta
ask
breve
you to let
exposición,
me finish this short
porque
statement.
inmediatamente iba a sustentar.
Immediately, I was going to go to this.
Okay,
It was
fine.
argued.
I apologize. I wanted to just try to focus on that because I think it's so critical.
Okay.
But that's okay. You go ahead.
Okay. Se argumentó,
It was
como
argued,
dijo el funcionario del
as
Banco Central
the
de Reserva que
officer
me ha
of
precedido,
the
que había la
Peruvian Central
posibilidad
Bank
de
already
embargo
said that
de
there was the
nuestras reservas
possibility of
internacionales.
attachment of our international
Y mediante
reserves.
estudios jurídicos que se
And by
realizaron,
means of
se
legal
eligió
studies
la plaza de
conducted,
como
Panama
una
was
plaza que
chosen
otorgaba
as a
seguridades para
place
evitar el
which
embargo
offered
de la banca
security
internacional
to
que podía cobrar
avoid
los adeudos
such
que tenía el
seizures
Perú y
or
los cuales habían entrado en
attachments
rebeldía por una decisión política
because the
del gobierno.
government of Peru had
Pues
entered
bien,
into
en
a
la plaza
kind
de
of
Panamá, sin
rebellion.
embargo, en mayo del 86, ya el Banco Central de Reserva
in
tenía
Panama,
depósitos
the
en una serie de
Reserve
bancos
Bank had
de prestigio mundial,
reserves
como es
already in a number
el
of prestigious
Südamericano,
banks. The
o el
Deutsche
Südameris,
Südamerikanische
o el
Bank,
Banco
Südameris,
Tokio,
Bancos
o el Banco
Tokio,
de la Nación
the
Argentina,
Bank of the
o el Swiss
Argentine
Bank
Nation, the
Corporation.
Swiss Bank
Quiere
Corporation.
decir
This
que no
means
necesariamente se
not
tenía que ir a
necessarily
depositar
did they
las
have to
reservas
go
internacionales del
and
Perú en el
deposit
BCCI.
Peru's
En segundo
reserves in the
lugar,
BCCI as well.
nosotros tenemos que
Also,
decir
we have to
que
say
en la decisión
that in the
de
decision
elegir
taken
el
to
BCCI de
choose
Panamá,
BCCI in
hubieron
Panama, there
trámites
were
ciertamente irregulares,
some
por
very
decirlo menos.
irregular procedures used, to say the least.
El diputado Fernando Olivera ni los miembros de una
Fernando
comisión
Olivera
que por lo demás es una comisión
is not the
multipartidaria,
only one saying
donde
this,
están
and
representados
neither
todos los
is my
sectores del
commission.
país,
We are a
incluyendo la izquierda
bipartisan
marxista.
commission representing all
Lo
the
dice
political
la
sectors,
Contraloría
including
General de la
the
República, que es la
Marxist Party.
institución
But our
autónoma
office
encargada de
of
velar por los
Central
recursos
Audit says this.
públicos.
This is the
Lo
office
dice
which is
en su
supposed to
informe
supervise our
008 del año 88,
account.
que es un examen
Report
especial
008
al manejo de las reservas
of
internacionales
this year
y las
does
imposiciones
say
efectuadas de los
this
fondos en moneda extranjera en
in its
instituciones
report
financieras del
on
exterior.
how foreign deposits
La Contraloría
were
General de la
handled.
República
The Comptroller
sostiene,
General of the
después de un
Republic
examen
says
documentado,
that after a
que se
documented
efectuaron
study that
depósitos hasta por
deposits were made
270
up to
millones en cuentas
$270 million
cifradas,
in numbered
aperturadas
accounts
en el BCCI
opened in
Overseas,
BCCI
obviando criterios de
overseas
seguridad
following
y
procedures
reciprocidad
for
crediticia mínima.
credit reciprocity
En efecto,
and
se señala
to get numbered
que para
accounts. It is said
decidir
here that
la
to
colocación de las
decide
reservas
to
internacionales del
place
Perú
the
no se
Peruvian
incluyó
reserves
toda la
there,
información mínima
not all
requerida
minimum
como criterios generales para
information
aprobar
was
corresponsalías con
even
bancos en el
considered,
exterior,
as is
de
usually
acuerdo a lo
considered to
normado
make
por el
such a
propio
decision,
directorio.
and in
En
accordance with the
efecto,
rules of the Board
no
of
se
Directors
incluyó
itself.
información sobre los
Information
estados
was not
financieros del
included on
BCCI
the
Overseas.
accounts, and
Solamente
the
se hizo el
state of
análisis sobre
accounts
el
of
BCCI
BCCI
Holding de Luxemburgo.
overseas.
Por eso es que se
The
consideró
only accounts
que había un
included
capital de
were
$1.000
the
millones de
holding
dólares,
committee,
cosa que no
company
era
rather,
representativa en el caso del BCCI Overseas de Panamá.
in
No
Luxembourg,
era
and
lo
this didn't
mismo,
have
como
anything
no
to
lo es
do
hasta
with
la
BCCI
fecha.
in Panama,
Panamá,
and still
el
doesn't.
holding
Panama
con sede en
is not the
Luxemburgo.
same thing
Sin
as the
embargo, de
holding
una
company
manera
with headquarters in Luxembourg.
engañosa, se
So
consideró
in a
el BCCI
deceitful way,
Holding Luxemburgo
BCCI
para poder
in Luxembourg's records were used to justify deposits up to $100 million at the outset. Neither was there an analysis made of the financial situation over the past 3 years, saying in error that the Bank of Peru had data up to 1981. This was not so. It was understood that it was necessary to evaluate BCCI Holding in order to get to issue a letter.
En segundo lugar,
in the second place,
se omitió evaluar los
omitted
antecedentes del BCCI Holding
to talk
y de sus
about the background of
principales
BCCI Holding Company
considerando que
and
no eran
its principal
corresponsales del
branches,
Banco
because
Central de
these were
Reserva del
not
Perú.
corresponding banks of the
Carecían
Central
de
Bank of Peru,
y en los archivos
and there
del Banco
was
Central de
nothing
Reserva
about
del
them
Perú
in the
cobraba información referencial
in the files of the bank, whereas there was qualitative and quantitative information about these banks when they came to try to open accounts in Peru in February of 1985. There is a report which is the Institution of Banking Analysis Limited of London, which said that BCCI already in 1985 was an aggressive, innovative bank which on a number of occasions had bothered the supervisory authorities such as the Bank of England. In 1985, from the legal point of view, it was considered to be in a ranking 4 out of 5. In other words, it was ranked very low. Though the management...
La Contraloría General de la República.
The General Office of the Controller of Peru.
La Contraloría General de la República del Perú.
The General Office of the Controller of Peru. This information is in Report 008, 88 of the year 88.
El diputado Pedro Cateriano.
Pedro Cateriano has asked to say something. The General Office of the Controller of Peru under our Constitution is a body which is autonomous.
I just wanted to know who had made that particular judgment for the record. But I do need to get through. I want to get through the, so we can try to focus on a few areas here. Please continue.
Sí, correcto.
Yes, sir.
El informe de la Contraloría.
The report of the Office of the Controller continues saying that though the Office of International Operations says that it did not have this information at its disposal, it knew that it existed and it could have gotten it. In any case, the administration or the management of the bank proposed that this corresponding relationship be set up and refrained from telling the board about this information at that time. In the third place, the Office of the Controller says that documentary evidence does not exist before the approval of the corresponding relationship, that other concrete proposals for lines of credit were or were not negotiated to decide which would be the best. Using the criteria of security and minimum reciprocity, it is believed that BCCI's proposal was the only one that existed and was adopted in conditions that are very far from minimum reciprocity. Moreover, the report of the Office of the Controller also says...
Excuse me. Do you know it was the only proposal? You're saying it was believed it was the only proposal. Do you know, was it the only proposal or might there have been others?
No.
¿Podrían haber habido otras propuestas?
Fíjese usted,
no.
Señor Presidente, ese
Mr.
es el dicho
Chairman, this is what the officers were saying, who were arguing to justify. We think precisely that what should have been done was that other proposals should have been sought, especially because we already had relations with the Bank of Tokyo, the Swiss Bank, the Bank of the Argentine nation. There were a lot of banks in Panama with which relationships already existed with Peru.
Excuse me for interrupting you, but I just want to understand. You're saying that you have found, as a matter of fact, that no other proposal was solicited. Is that accurate?
Eso es lo que nosotros
This is what we have investigated in our investigating committee. They say
only one proposal?
Fíjese usted.
Sir, the conclusion that we are supporting here, and that is why I am giving you this documented explanation, is that there was here in the decision to place Peru's international reserves in BCCI a powerful force at work which caused decisions to be taken very rapidly. A 3-page report, only 3 pages, on BCCI Holding Company of Luxembourg was what made the decision be taken to place huge amounts of Peru's reserves in Panama. And I was reading the conclusion about reciprocity. That the reciprocity that Peru got. The Office of the Comptroller said that reciprocity that the Reserve Bank of Peru got with BCCI was always greater than what it got. 250 million in deposit versus about 85 million in lines of credit. This is much greater than the differential with other banks. No evidence has been found for any reason for this significant concentration of resources in this one bank.
Now, the gentleman from the Reserve asserted that no deposits were lost, that nothing was lost to the people of Peru. Is that accurate? That in effect all the deposits that were made were then withdrawn, so there was no loss ultimately?
The losses can be quantified in a number of different ways. First of all, using the concept of reciprocity, Peru needed lines of credit, and it placed its international reserves without getting lines of credit in equal proportion. Secondly, the officer of the central bank forgot to say that in May of 1986 and June of 86, when the accounts were opened in BCCI, $15 million were held in a checking account that doesn't earn any interest at all. And this is certainly concrete damage. Thirdly, there were deposits made above the limits authorized by the Central Bank of Reserve, allowing BCCI to earn a profit. And we have to say, to reach conclusions about why we feel that this conduct was irregular and suspicious and even criminal, as District Attorney Morgenthau alleges, is that there were very concrete observations made in 1987 regarding BCCI's situation in the world, which have been mentioned here. There are the reports which already recommended withdrawal of deposits in July of 1987. These were reports from London and which were taken up by the central bank's relevant department. But despite that, substantial amounts were maintained at least until December of 87 and January of 88. Coincidentally, that is when Panama entered into a crisis because of the denunciations or accusations against Manuel Noriega. Mr. Flores has asked me, or Ms. Flores has asked to speak.
The central bank received information regarding the bad situation of the BCCI around July 1987. Although arguing that some credits should be paid, funds were not retired up to, they began to retire them, but they didn't finish retiring them up to December 1988. That's something that for us sounds really curious. Although there were very clear reports saying that there was no reciprocity and that the given argument in 1986 that we wanted to protect funds, that was the main argument. We are trying to protect funds. We are trying not to be withdrawn. Nevertheless, knowing that we were in a risky situation, even more risky than the risk of our peers, we maintain our reserves up to December 1988.
Now, have you discovered anything with respect to the bank and its dealings, or with respect to officials who are responsible? Have you discovered anything concrete as to why that money was not withdrawn more rapidly? Do you have any answer to that?
Justamente a eso iba.
That was just what I was getting to, Mr. Chairman.
Nosotros empezamos esta
We
indagación
began this investigation because within our job, which is to examine investigations and operations, financial operations having to do with President Garcia's estate, in 1987 there was published in a magazine, Oiga, the fact that the President of Peru had an account in BCCI for $450 million, and that was where the connection came with the work of our committee. After having had meetings with the District Attorney Morgenthau in May and then again in June on the part of members of the committee, we discovered that all of this irregular and suspicious behavior in these transactions vis-a-vis our reserves and BCCI had a cause, and the cause was bribery. It was a payment of commissions, illicit commissions, to officers of the central bank and to other persons which are still to be identified, which remain to be identified. We have seen and we have the documents exist in New York, as stated by District Attorney Morgenthau in the complaint he filed to before the corresponding court. He says the following, and I hope that Ms. Lourdes Flores will read this out in English.
You know it.
Thank you.
You know, it's the third point of the indictment saying that defendants authorize and cause to be authorized the payments of bribes and kickbacks to agents of other banking and financial institutions. By virtue of that practice, defendants attempted to avoid and did avoid scrutiny by other banking and financial institutions. In 1986 and 1987, to obtain deposits from a banking relationship with the Central Reserve Bank of Peru, defendants Abedi and Nahvi authorized and directed employees of the BCC group to open a bank account in a Swiss bank in Panama to transmit bribes and kickbacks in the amount of a percentage of these deposits maintained by the Central Reserve Bank of Peru to two senior officers of that bank. The total of such payments was approximately $3 million. But you were also speaking of the 87 documents or possibilities. Yes, up to now, we have received some documents showing us that there were very close relationships, not precisely from officers of the bank, but from people outside the bank in a very high level in our government.
Well, I appreciate what we would like to do is receive those documents into the record, if we may, because they certainly go to the question of a pattern of behavior. But again, I don't want to turn this into a trial court or something, or into an accusatory panel. So I want to do that within the record, and we'll decide whether we'll keep, how to treat those in the terms of the record. But you've established both through your testimony and through the indictment that there is an allegation sufficient to bring an indictment with respect to the question of payoffs being made in order to solicit the business. And you have described the inconsistencies in the decision-making that seem to support the notion that something happened. Yes?
Definitely. And we think that the cause of this behavior and the decision to place Peru's international reserves in BCCI was corruption. And here we have a document of the Swiss Bank Corporation in Panama proving that BCCI overseas of Georgetown Grand Cayman From there, transfers were made to the Security Bank, to the Swiss Bank in New York, and transferred from there to an account in Panama of the Swiss Bank. These were the bribes for these officers. We don't know who handled these accounts. We know that the accounts were opened by Leonel Figueroa and Hector Nera, the president and the general manager at the time, according to the accounts filed by Morgenthau. But there are other people under the Selva Negra and Tierra Firme codes, and this requires some clarification, because we are convinced that there are other authorities higher up who intervene, as I am about to explain.
En la denuncia que hace el gran jurado
to
de
say
Nueva
that
York,
in the indictment by the
especifica a
grand
dos
jury,
personajes
two
como
people are
Abedi y
specified.
Nagbi como quienes
Abedi
ordenan
and
que se
Nasby,
realice dichas
who
transferencias.
ordered these
Esto implica
transfers.
una
This
relación de muy alto
implies a
nivel
very
de
high-level relationship in BCCI, not even at the officer level, who we've said participated in the transactions with BCCI. Cateriano has also asked to speak. Deputy Cateriano. Mr. Chairman, it's also important to underscore that the usual practice of the Peruvian Central Bank in making this kind of a transaction is to have it done by the officials and technicians. Now, in this case, Panama, the general manager and the president of the Central Bank of Peru went to Peru themselves. This is very unusual, and this was something that the Peruvian Central Bank did not do in carrying out this kind of operation normally. Because in Peru, the members of the board of directors are political. They are named by political people, the President of the Republic, in the case of the President, and the members of the board, including there are four named by the President and three named by the Senate. That is why the function they carry out is not really technical. It is basically political. So traditionally, in the Central Bank, technicians, experts carry out this sort of operation or transaction. I would like to continue, if I may. The contracts were signed with the Central Bank by the following, or for the Central Bank by the following, or with the Central Bank by A.M. Bilgrani, Christian Nassin, J.M. H. Bisui, and Akhtar Qureshi. We have discovered in our investigation, in our committee, the entry into the country of two persons involved in this BCCI scandal, and which have been convicted for drug money laundering in a Tampa court. This is a document dated 1991, which I will give the committee in a spirit of mutual cooperation. In this document that I'm going to give you, it is proven that this Pakistani national Bilgrani Avida entered Peru from Panama on the 18th of December of 1986. A great coincidence here. That same date, General Manuel Antonio Noriega traveled to Peru too. And why did he go to Peru? To be decorated by President Alan García with the highest decoration offered by the Army. Here is the proof of that. The relationship with General Noriega included unrecorded visits, as the Kerry Committee heard from Mr. Blandón, who was the Consul General in New York of Panama. and
y desapareció
who said
durante 6 horas en la visita
that
que
there
estaba
was a
realizando de manera
disappearance in his official visit for
También
6
hemos
hours.
registrado
We also see here
También hemos registrado
we have also
otro ingreso al Perú
recorded another entry into Peru of another person who has also been convicted in Tampa, Anjat Awan Malik.
Este es un personaje
This is a person
tenía que ver mucho
who had a
con el
great deal
manejo
to do
de
with
las
the
cuentas
management
personales
of the
de los
personal
gobernantes
accounts of
corruptos. Y en
corrupt
particular era el banquero personal del general Noriega.
people, such as being the personal banker of General Noriega. He entered Peru January 18, 1988, and stayed
justo cuando había una crisis en Panamá.
until there was a crisis in Panama, and then this person, Anjat Anwar Malik, according to some information which has reached the Commission, may be the personal banker of our own former President Alan García.
Yeah, but that's not, let me just, I really don't want comments according to somebody, maybe. I mean, these are the allegations that I'm really not interested in, and the committee doesn't want. And I want to caution you against that. I want to know about BCCI specifically, but I do not want to know about somebody else's rumor or allegation at this point. It's not going to be relevant to what the committee's trying to decide. I think we've really almost established, I mean, the critical component here, the critical component is the pattern of visits by people and the people that they met with or talked to, the degree that normal procedures were not followed, the degree to which the bank specifically undertook to meet with people in ways that were irregular and so forth. I think it's the question of sort of influence and movement, but not allegations by people outside.
Let me state this.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. Chairman, I am referring to concrete facts. We have reports stating these things. I understand what you meant when you said what you just said. I understand very well. But this has a connection, and the allusions are relevant. I will reserve referring to the reports of very highly reputable investigators, private detectives such as Kroll and Associates, who investigated Saddam Hussein, Duvalier, Marcos. I will reserve that for now, and I will talk about the Lark report, because I don't want anybody to
I appreciate
interpret what I'm saying as being off the subject. But I am going to give you grounds with documents to show how there is a connection in connection with the decision to place our reserves in BCCI. Did you want to say something, Senator Kerry?
No, I appreciate it. I want specifically to see the connection with BCCI and the decision very much. But let me just say, we've been going on for almost an hour now for a short opening statement. And we need, although I've interrupted it a number of times, we're going to need to try to bring this tight into a circuit. But what I need, and I think you've been doing it, believe me, I think it's been very helpful that you've showed the deviation from procedure and you've showed the pattern. What I want to understand is, were there any specific meetings that you're aware of and so forth? Thank you.
Yeah. The main thing you are asking, and I think you are right on that, is that if there was a personal relationship which was not relation just with the formal requests which are useful in these cases, which are common in these cases. And we do think there were. In 1986, Mr. Morgenthau has established that former President Alan García was consulted. That's a first fact which has been demonstrated.
Consulted by whom?
He didn't tell us exactly who he was, but there are some other facts which I think could help. Mr. Belgrami was in Peru in 1986. What he said is that representatives of BCCI spoke with him, met him, and the decision was made at that level. We have that record.
Do you know the name of R. Alberto Calvo?
No, I don't, but Mr. Cateriano could explain you exactly who he was.
Well, am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's just what we're getting to, if you'll allow me. I have a document here which we have obtained from the office of BCCI in Miami, Florida, dated February 1987, February 10th, 1987. This is a document to Mr. Chafee, and it says the following. Mr. Oscar Rizo Patron called from Lima to confirm that the President of Peru at any moment during the course of next week, 16 to 20 February, can receive you. Because of the floods and other situations, the President Garcia is traveling in the interior of Peru. Mr. Rizo Patron suggests 2 days on your schedule for this visit, so as to give time for this meeting. We will give you this document too, Mr. Chafee.
I have this document. Let me just interrupt you, if I may. This is from, now let me just establish this document. This is a February 10th memo to Mr. Chafee. From whom? Do you know?
No, somebody at the bank, probably.
Okay.
Signed
But it is
by someone called Cesar. Oh, Cecil.
And it is from the BCCI Bank, Latin American and Caribbean region, based in Miami, Florida, correct?
Yes.
All right, well, that document will be placed in the record.
That's right.
And then there's a...
What I mean is that in February of 1987...
I need to interrupt you because we're on the back end of a vote. We get 15 minutes to vote, and I've got a few minutes now to get over to the floor and vote as soon as I come back. But I need to ask you to try to confer to see if you can organize maybe the next 15 minutes or so, because I do need to get to the next panelist and to Argentina, and I want to try to keep it as factually tight as we can. We'll stand in recess for the next few minutes. Hearing will come to order. Let me just explain to everybody that regrettably we are running tighter than we want to be. I've got to get to the Banking Committee markup before too long. So we need to be somewhat in summary. And some of the documents can be placed in the record. We will release some of the documents that explain some of what is going on. So if you summarize and we put the documents in, I think we're going to have the record that we need in terms of this issue.
May I continue?
See.
Thank you very much. I was just talking about the February 10th, 87 document coordinating a trip of Mr. Chafee to Peru to have a meeting with President Garcia. This was not to talk about the floods, quite obviously, floods that were going on in Peru at the time. I must say that in February of 1987, the deposits of Peru in BCCI went up to $261 million, in excess of $61 million over the limit. This was the maximum excess over the limit throughout the whole period. Here I have another document talking about Alberto Calvo. This is a document from Alberto Calvo to Mr. Chafee of BCCI, the Latin American Caribbean Office, Regional Office, July 21st, when the reports were received, negative reports about BCCI in Panama, meaning that the Reserve Bank was considering withdrawing its deposits. Here I have this document which talks about a conversation with Alberto Calvo, who is not a BCR or BCCI or a Peruvian official. This is a conversation with Daniel Carboneto, who is an advisor of the President Republic talking about how it's possible that steps are being taken to have a new conversation with President Garcia to see what can happen or what can be done about Peru's deposits. We will give you this document so it can
Just tell me for the
be on the record.
Who is Alberto Calvo?
El diputado Pedro Cateriano le puede ampliar.
Mr. Cateriano can tell you. We have investigated who Mr. Calvo is, and we received the information that this is a banker managing Latin American relations for BCCI. He is an Argentine national. Mr. Alberto Calvo had relations before he was in BCCI in the Inter-American Bank, where he had some relations with Peruvian officers also working in the Inter-American Bank.
Now this, let me just say, this memo, which I'm going to put in the record that follows the previous memo of the February 10th, this memo talks about further meetings and says that they agree to meet with the president of the central bank 1 week after he takes office, and after that they will visit with the president of the republic. So this is BCCI talking about top-level meetings between the president of the central bank and the president of the republic. Is that correct? Okay. Let me just try to speed this along a little bit. There is a subsequent July 21st, 1987 memo, which is also from Mr. Alberto Calvo, also to Mr. Shafi. No, I'm on the wrong one here. Excuse me. There is an August 25th memo from Mr. Alberto Calvi to Mr. Shafi. And that memo talks about the relation with the Central Bank of Peru. And it talks about a friend. Correct, and a meeting with a friend. It talks about the central bank continuing its present operational relationship with BCC if the line of credit could be increased. Is that correct? Was the line of credit at that time increased?
There was a statement that the line of credit would be increased, and we think that the person that had the meeting...
Well, I don't want to ask who you think it was. I mean, do you know who it was? Do you know who was at the meeting? You don't know who was at the meeting. Well, then let's just leave out. I don't want any guessing. All right, well, this memo will also be made part of the record. Now, are there any other memoranda that you have? Excuse me, then there's a... Is there any other memorandum or letter or document pertaining to BCCI meetings with respect to these transactions?
No, not for now. But what we have to say is that the Reserve Bank, being autonomous in nature, is made up of 4 representatives of the executive branch named by the President and 3 members named by the Senate. During Garcia's presidency, his party had a majority and named the President as President a person who had been the Secretary of the Presidency. So it has been proven that there was no reason for Alan Garcia to have been in any of this. I would like to say very briefly what happened with the Mirage. This is a case which really deserves your attention, if you will allow me.
We need to do it, but we need to do it quickly.
Very quickly. In August of 1986, Peru decided it would not make profits, substantial profits on the sales of 14 Mirages. This was a decision that the Peruvian government made to get rid of these Mirages because Peru could not afford to pay Marcel Dassault anymore. But it could resell these planes to another country. This was in the sales contract with Marcel Dassault and appeared in 3 different paragraphs. But Peru did not do this. According to statements made by the representative of the government, the statements made in the committee I preside, these sales were not made to third countries because this was not authorized by President Alan García. The damage to the country and the profit to third parties resides in the fact that the market price of these 14 Mirages, the price which was paid for each plane at that time was $37 million, as stipulated in the statement of the Peruvian negotiator Hector Delgado Parker. What Peru had to pay to Marcel Dassault, the manufacturer for each plane, because these planes were contracted for in 1982 to be manufactured later, were $12 million. That is to say, there was a difference of $25 million per aircraft. Peru, however, did not make this transfer to third countries, for which all it needed to do was get the approval of the French government. We have discovered, however, by Mr. Morgenthau's work, that this operation ended up as a resale. BCCI ended up being the resales agent, and the London office of BCCI approved this sale. And according to what we've heard, there was a falsification of documents to hide the country which was the final destination of these aircraft. We have received information that this plane was Iraq, was alleged to be Iraq during the period of Saddam Hussein. This true customer was being hidden because arms traffickers, international arms traffickers, were involved in this.
Let me interrupt you. May I interrupt you, please?
Working in BCCI of London.
But again, this is something that is not fully documented yet, correct? This is an accusation. Is that accurate?
The documents exist in Mr. Morgenthau's office. They are in an investigation phase, and that is why we are stating this here in the Kerry Commission, to ask for the cooperation of international authorities so that we can clarify this. Mr. Morgenthau's people think that there was a $100 million gap, and we think it's between $150 and $200 million. Sir, this requires an investigation, obviously. We have gotten a statement from Mr. Morgenthau for Peruvian television. This was broadcast to our whole country. And there he affirms that this negotiation caused Peru to lose $100 million. And BCCI was apparently linked to this. This is something we need to go into.
I agree. Let me just say, there is absolutely no disagreement from me. It is something that needs to be gone into, but this is not the place where we're going to be able to resolve it and get at it. And what I've been trying to establish here are really the questions, without unfairly making any accusations in it, though the accusations have already been made specifically by the indictment, by Bob Morgenthau, and by your commission. There are certain things that are on the table, and you can't avoid those, and I agree with that. But again, I don't want to go through every detail of them because there is no way that this committee can sort that out. What we're trying to do is show the degree to which BCCI and its method of operation and the personalities and people who are involved with it have in fact created a situation in your country and in other countries where now people are left picking up the pieces and trying to sort it out. And in addition to that, to show the way in which, by high-level operations and conversations and meetings, it appears as though they've left many people wondering what happened to the procedures in countries. That is not true only of Peru. It is true in some 60 nations or so, and it is true very much right here in the United States. So we share that. Now, having said that, I have to terminate the part of the inquiry in terms of just the factual part here. We will receive as a committee through staff further documents so that our report capacity and analysis capacity will remain so we can do that. But I'd like to ask you one question, if I may, just to, and that is, has your effort to get at this as an investigative body been hindered by the bank secrecy laws? Has that made it difficult to find out what's happened here?
Definitely. We have to state that present legislation favors the criminal, unfortunately. And the action of justice meets many obstacles. The information and the controls which are necessary are not forthcoming in order to, and this allows crime to be committed through legally constituted financial institutions. I think the situation has to be corrected. And I don't want to finish, if this is my final statement, without...
No, I'll come back to you for a final statement. Let me just ask Ms. Flores, would you tell me to what extent Peru is threatened by drug money laundering and drug trafficking, and what has been the impact on Peruvian life of this kind of corporate activity?
Let me tell you with numbers something which is a movement of money regarding with drugs. Peru receives or moves around $2,000 million a year from money coming from drugs. That means that in all our foreign relationships and reestablishing credits and financial relationships with other countries, it is a very big problem to think that we could avoid the money we are taking from drugs. It is around 2,000 million a year of money moving through drugs.
When you say 2,000 million, I think we're probably losing something in the currency conversion here, conceivably.
$2 million. I'm sorry, excuse me, $2 million.
On this same subject, I want to give you just two examples.
But I need to ask you, I must be fair. I have a neighboring country of yours waiting in the back here, and I really want to ask you for the summary statement, very briefly, if I can. Yes, sir.
Yes, I will conclude saying that on this subject, in the upper Huallaga Valley, there were 4 planes which went to pick up money every week. And it was detected that one citizen who was just a peasant had changed $6 million in just 1 month. And finally, we discovered he was connected to cocaine. And between 1985 and 90, the number of acres went from 60,000 to 25,000 acres, and it's very difficult not to connect all of this thing to increased drug trafficking involvement. We need the cooperation of the authorities of the United States and the authorities of the rest of the world to achieve the goals of our investigation, i.e. justice. We need to recognize the work done by Mr. Morgenthau. We want to be very clear about the shared feelings we have of cooperation with what you are doing. We are getting cooperation from other bodies, but not as much. So we would like to ask for cooperation from the Department of Justice, the Department of the Treasury, the Customs, and other offices in the Federal Reserve, for example, to awake their consciousness so they'll realize that this is a fight for justice, and they cannot use bureaucratic procedures to deny cooperation in this fight for justice, in our desire to defend the rule of law, and which will allow us once and for all to defeat corruption and to get to those who are the first and primary violators of human rights in Peru, which are the terrorists, so that there will be no quarter given them by our government. So I would like to thank you on behalf of my committee. I hope that we will continue this very fluid cooperation that we have had up to now. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to be here. And let me just say that as chairman of the Narcotics Committee, we have sat here in this room and listened to our own Assistant Secretary of State for Narcotic Affairs talk to us about the problems in Peru. I am personally very aware of the difficulties in the Huallaga Valley, the efforts and dangers that are going on there, and the great tensions in your society as a consequence of both the Sendero Luminosa as well as the whole problem of drug trafficking linked to those kinds of efforts. And I simply say to you that banks that involve themselves in laundering that money are as much a part of the problem as anybody else who's involved in the entire line and chain of command. And so you've raised many questions. We haven't answered a whole lot of them here today, and I think one has to say that. But the questions are very legitimate. They're very real, and they need to be addressed. And I think we will proceed here to continue to try to gather information and understand this. It's very clear that BCCI launched one of those offenses that we've heard about in order to secure these funds and deal in Panama and present itself falsely. And I think that that there's a great deal more of the story, though, yet to be told. But I want to thank you very much. We appreciate it. If I could ask the next panel quickly, because we really only have about 20 more minutes here to continue. Thank you very, very much. I will. Yeah. Okay. Can we do the change now? Mr. Castillo? I think, Mr. Castillo, that it's my impression that there is not really a need for you to testify very much, because I think we tried to steer clear of the gravamen of any of the offenses. If you have something that you want to clarify in a couple of minutes, I would be delighted. But it was my sense there's not a great deal to address. Am I incorrect?
I would suggest yes.
Well, I'd be happy. I want to be fair, so if you would raise your hand, raise your right hand, please. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right. If you would say, I want this to be as brief as we can make it. Is there something specific with respect to the BCCI that you can add, or to the testimony you've heard that you want to address in fairness? Would you identify yourself, please, for the record?
Señor Senador, mi nombre es Jorge del
My name is Jorge del Castillo. I am a deputy in Peru too, representing the Aprista party, and I am a member of the investigating committee in which the other people who preceded me are serving. I want to be very specific here and brief in honoring your request. Irresponsible accusations
let me just say to you, no. There were no accusations made here that are not part of the indictment. So, and we're not going to try the indictment here. So if there's something that was said specifically here that is incorrect, then I want you to address that. But we're not going to go into whether or not the indictment is correct or incorrect. Okay.
No me he referido a la acusación de
No, I'm not talking about Morgenthal's indictment. I'm talking about the comments on the Mirage business, for instance. Let me start
Fair
there.
enough. Be delighted.
Parece, señor senador, que hay una confusión.
It seems that there is a confusion here with Deputy Olivera when he involves the contract of the Peruvian Mirages with BCCI.
Cuando empezó la sesión,
When the meeting or the session began,
todavía no se había incorporado.
you had not come in yet, but Senator Cranston read some documents connecting an Argentine operation of the Mirages with BCCI, not Peru. Peru bought from Marcel Dassault, a state-owned enterprise of France,
un total de 26 aviones,
a total of 26 aircraft between 82 and 84.
Antes
Before
de que el doctor Alan García fuera presidente, en esa
Garcia
época gobernaba
was
el Perú el arquitecto
president.
Fernando Belaúnde Terry.
Fernando Belaúnde Terry was
Cuando
president
asumió la
at the time.
presidencia el doctor Alan
When
García,
Dr. Alan Garcia became president, and I'm going to give you a specific document on this.
But the issue here on the Mirage is not really the record previously. The issue, as I understood it, was that BCCI facilitated a sale that was made to a Middle Eastern country. Now that's the issue. Is that true or not true?
Eso no es cierto.
This is not true.
El Perú, el gobierno del Perú,
The government of
bajo
Peru,
su presidente Alan García,
under President Alan Garcia,
mismo día
the
que
same
tomó
day,
su función, el 28 de julio de
the 28th of July 1985, as he took power, announced that since Peru was a poor country,
no podía estar gastando en
it could
armas.
not be spending money on weapons.
Y por tanto, en lugar de comprar
And therefore,
26
instead of
aviones,
buying 26
él había
planes,
dado las disposiciones
he
para
had
bajar la
given
compra de
orders
aviones.
to reduce the order.
Este fue un
This was
una reestructuración
a
de contrato
restructuring of
hecha
the contract,
directamente
which was done
entre el
directly
gobierno del Perú
between the
y
Peruvian
el gobierno de
government
Francia, y
and the
ahora
French
le voy a dejar los
government. And I am
documentos
going to
firmados
give you the
por los
signed
cancilleres
documents by the
del
foreign
Perú,
ministers of Peru,
Alan Wagner-Tizón, y el
Alan
canciller de
Wagner,
Francia,
and
y el
the
Bernard
French
Raymond, sobre la
foreign minister
reestructuración
as well,
del contrato. El Perú,
restructuring this contract.
señor,
Peru
no es un país
is not a country
armamentista, ni
which
agresivo,
is
ni que aliente las
aggressive,
guerras entre
nor
otros países.
one
Por
which
tanto, no
encourages
podía revender
wars
aviones.
But,
with other
sir,
countries. Therefore, it would not resell planes.
Okay, the question is whether or not BCCI was part of a transaction for the sale of weapons. Were Mirages sold? Did Peru sell Mirages to another country?
El Perú no vendió Mirage a otro
Peru
país.
did not sell planes to other countries. It cut its contract back in a direct contract with the French government, government to government, without any
So it's your
middleman.
testimony then that no planes were ever transferred from Peru to any other country?
Por ningún motivo, en ningún momento,
in no way,
hubo una,
at no time.
So let me move away from that, because I'm not here, we're not here to get into the fact, I'm not going to be the decider of fact between this. You've stated on the record it didn't happen, they've stated on the record that it did happen, and as I said, a lot of questions have been raised here. The question I ask you is, with respect to BCCI, is there anything that you have heard with respect to BCCI that is factually incorrect, or that you can help the committee to understand better? Because the dispute with respect to President Garcia, as I said at the outset, is not for this committee to decide. I've tried to steer the people who testified a moment ago away from any accusations. I'm not here to hear them. We know what's out in public. What I want to know is about BCCI. And so I'm confident that in Peru this issue is going to be litigated, investigated, decided. It's not here that it should happen. And I have tried to acknowledge that there is a total other side to that. There is no effort here to say that President Garcia did know, did something, or didn't do something. And I accept your statement on its face. There's a controversy, and we can't resolve it. We're not here to resolve it. So if you could help me with respect to BCCI, is there a fact that you can show me by document or otherwise that is incorrect in our current understanding of BCCI's relationship with Peru?
Correcto, señor. Voy a entrar
Yes,
a ese tema y no
I will
voy a intentar no
discuss
salir.
that, and I will try not to get off the
Le voy a
subject.
alcanzar los documentos
I'm going to give you the
para concluir el tema
documents
anterior
to
del
conclude the
gobierno de
prior
Francia, sin
subject
Fair enough,
on the
and I will
French,
make those part of the
government-to-government
record.
contract.
y
Thank
sin
you.
intervención del BCCI para nada. El BCCI,
BCCI,
señor presidente, señor senador, llegó
Mr.
al
Chairman,
Perú en
came to Peru in
1984.
1984.
Probablemente
Probably
sorprendió en el Perú,
it was
como en 70 países del mundo,
a source of
la
surprise
buena fe
in
de
Peru,
muchísima gente.
as in 60 other countries as well, how much good faith people had.
Como usted sabe, la costumbre
As you
parece
know,
ese banco, como cualquier banco,
it
quiere
seems
penetrar un país,
that when
vincularse a
any
grupos
bank wants to get into a
importantes
country,
del
it
país.
wants to get into touch and contact with important groups of people in the country. And in March of 1984, BCCI in Peru asked for authorization from the Superintendency of Banks and Insurance to set up a branch. So you will see the level
de confiabilidad que podía
of
dar
reliability
un banco
that a bank,
aparentemente muy solvente
a very,
en ese tiempo,
apparently very solid bank,
1984,
seemed to have at that time. BCCI,
para solicitar su autorización,
to ask for this authorization,
requirió y obtuvo
asked for and got the legal advice of a
estudio de abogados sumamente importante.
very important law firm in Peru.
Y yo tengo aquí en la prueba
And
número
here
1 que le voy a
in
entregar, una
exhibit
copia
number 1 that I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you a sealed copy
dated
dated March 14, 1984, from the superintendency showing that BCCI asked for permission to set up a branch. And it says that its legal domicile will be the law office of Sterling, Arias, and Davis and Associates, which is a very well-known law firm. Dr. Sterling, who is a person that all of us respect and cannot possibly be suspected of anything illegal. He is a member of Dr. Lunes Flores' party and is the president of the Peruvian Senate. He's beyond reproach. This is exhibit number 1. In 1984, the superintendency, in a document in November, asked the central bank to process the approval. I am giving you a list of all of the central bank staff members from 1980 to 1990. Here there is a very interesting person who was the general manager of the central bank between 1980 and 84 until October of 84. Remember that BCCI's request came in March and he was there until October. They say in Lima, and this is a saying, a speculation, I recognize, that this same person, the general manager, was the promoter of BCCI in Peru. This person is called Brian Jensen Rullo. In 1984, Mr. Brian Jensen Rullo resigned from this post at the central bank and he moved to Miami. And in Miami, he was named manager of BCCI. So if anyone knows about the links of Peru with BCCI, it is Brian Jensen, because he had been general manager of the central bank and because he was later a Miami manager of BCCI. Brian Jensen, until yesterday, was representative in Peru, named by the Minister of Economy, Carlos Bologna, the representative of Peru to the World Bank. Yesterday, though, the president of Peru, Alberto Fujimori, dismissed him from this position when he learned of evidence that this person, Brian Jensen,
un nexo
was allegedly a link to BCCI. And he lives in Washington now, and I think it would be interesting for you to hear his testimony. He was general manager starting January 19, 1981 until October 1984. When BCCI already had been working 6 or 7 months, or had been working for 6 or 7 months to try to set up its branch in Peru. The branch in Peru was approved by the director of the central bank February 1st, 1985. We are still talking about the prior administration before Dr. Garcia.
Can you get into the 1986 and 7 stage where the transaction began in terms of the credit line?
Yes, I just want to read 2 lines of the director's report of February 1985. This board of directors is made up of very serious people. I think all of them have impeccable reputations in the country, and I am sure that they were all surprised, as Dr. Sterling was, and as many other people who are honest and of good faith must have been. The report said, or the agreement said, the board, feeling that the opening of a foreign bank at this point shows confidence in our country, and taking into account that this is a bank which is presently one of the most important in the world, and nothing has been found against it, the board has decided to act in favor of the request. This same report includes an authorization of the superintendency, and I am including the documents, the official documents which appeared in the press in Lima, establishing this branch. Later, this branch was not actually set up, but all of these steps were taken by the public authorities of Peru so that it could have been set up. In 1986, April 1st, 1986, and I am sending the text of the Board of Directors report, the decision was taken by the Board of the Central Bank to establish a corresponding relationship and deposits, and I don't want to refer to more details because Mr. Yaque has explained all of this very clearly indeed. It was the director of BCCI in July that said it was necessary to revise some factors or some areas.
I hate to interrupt you here, but as you know, I promised I would give you an opportunity to respond to the prior panel. I can't go through another entire panel of testimony separately now. If you want to do that at some point, we can talk about it, but I've got to ask you to strictly, I mean, you know, we could go through the entire history from a different perspective, and we'll sit here and sort it out. I think the key question is, and let me come to some key questions. It has been asserted by the investigative team as they have spoken that there are irregularities in the way that the line of credit was extended, and that there are significant questions in Peru. Leaving President Garcia, let's leave the president completely out of this. Let's assume there's no President Garcia, there's nobody. Just the way BCCI worked when suddenly the government made a decision that it needed some credit and went to Panama. Now, why did it go to Panama? Was there something about the way BCCI worked? Do you find that? Or do you think BCCI is a terrific bank with no problems?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to refer to the Peruvian Constitution, and I'm going to leave you a copy of it. But there it says that the central bank is an autonomous body. It does not depend on the executive branch.
I accept that.
This is
so
very
is
important.
it, but answer my question. I mean, I take it that what you're saying is that the BCCI relationship was bad, but that somebody else had something to do with that, and that not the president. Is that what you're saying to us?
Claro. Los únicos
The
funcionarios
only officers responsible for the BCCI matter were the members of the board.
ninguna otra persona más.
No one
El
else.
día de ayer en Lima,
Yesterday
Okay, the members
in
of the
Lima,
board of the Federal Reserve are responsible, correct? Is that what you're saying?
efectivamente, señor.
All right.
yes, sir.
Was BCCI a good bank to deal with or not? Yes or no?
Señor, yo no conozco esos antecedentes.
I don't know this
Yo he
background.
venido,
I
con
have come
el objetivo, como usted conoce,
with the purpose, as you know,
impedir
of
que se hiciera en su presencia.
stopping,
Usted no lo ha permitido. Usted
and
no
you
lo ha
have
permitido.
not allowed this to happen, fortunately, but stopping undue links to be drawn here. I don't
Fair enough.
judge
Well, if you
BCCI
agree
pro
with
or
me-
con.
Fair enough, and I appreciate your comment, because I wanted to bend over backwards not to have any linkages here. This is not a place where we're looking for, as I have said, to try to sort out the gravamen of the accusations. It's a place where we want to understand people's view of BCCI. Now, from your perspective, can you share with the committee a view of BCCI? If you don't have knowledge of that, then I will make part of the record any clarification you have of any comment to which you object. But I don't want to take the time now because of the gentleman from Argentina who's waiting, and I want to get some of that on the table because it's important as to Argentina's experience with BCCI.
Señor senador,
Senator,
aquí se ha comentado que el
it's
fiscal
been said
Morgenthau
here
habría
that
declarado
Mr.
un
Morgenthau
nexo entre el
allegedly
presidente García
made a
y
link
el BCCI.
between President
en el tema
Garcia
de unos
and
presuntos
BCCI
sobornos a funcionarios,
regarding
cosa que en mi país
presumed
esta
bribes.
declaración ha empezado una investigación.
And we have begun an investigation in
Pero yo
Peru
tengo
on
y le
this.
estoy dejando
But I have, and I am leaving you,
un cable de F publicado en un diario de Nueva
a
York.
cable, an
Es el
EFE
único que ha
cable,
hecho
which was the
referencia a
only
una
one that
pregunta de esta
referred to
naturaleza.
a question of this
Dice
sort.
textualmente,
And this press
preguntado,
release says,
si el expresidente del Perú, Alan
asked
García,
if President Alan
el que se
Garcia
en Perú,
was
los
being
presuntos
investigated
vínculos
in
con el
Peru
BCCI,
regarding his
estaba
links with
involucrado en el
the
asunto de los sobornos,
BCCI, if this was
Morgenthau respondió
connected
negativamente.
to the
Yo le
bribes,
dejo también esta
Morgenthau
prueba,
said
que no hay
no.
ninguna evidencia que el fiscal
I leave this with you
Morgenthau
because
haya
there's
declarado
no
en un
evidence
sentido
that
distinto.
Morgenthau said anything different
Pero,
from this.
All right. Let me just say to you, Mr. Castillo, I respect that. And the committee accepts what we have heard today completely neutrally with respect to President Garcia. And I want the press to understand that, and I make it very clear for the record. As far as we are concerned, that is outside of this committee at this time. It is between the people of Peru and its own government and its own processes for determining that, and it is between Mr. Morgenthau and his indictment process, which is totally separate from here. But what I want to simply try to understand, unless there is documentary evidence of something, and then obviously we're going to accept that. But at the moment, we're really trying to get a picture of the questions that have been raised by this. The mere fact that this is happening in Peru is a fallout from BCCI. That is, in effect, one of the repercussions of this. The fact that there was a soft credit line, if you will, with an imbalance in the amount of credit for the amount of cost. The fact that it had to go to Panama, and BCCI was so prepared to help a country find a way around the laws and went to Panama and had secret accounts and so forth, raises the very kinds of issues that we're trying to raise. And while nothing is dispositive here of any of those issues, that's what we're trying to show. In a sense, your very conflict is itself a statement about BCCI and the kind of operation that it has left behind it. And this is the wake, if you will. This is the fallout. those banking institutions or those institutions that perform above the board and so forth don't have these kinds of accusations flying around them and don't leave these kinds of question marks, hopefully. So I think that it has served its purpose of leaving in people's minds the sense that it came in, offered itself where other banks wouldn't go, provided an opportunity to get around the legitimate credit interests of the rest of the banking world, took advantage of a country's plight in that respect, made money off it, and left a lot of chaos in its wake. And as I say, nothing here is dispositive of any of that, but I genuinely want you to feel that this record is open to you, and if there's any comment that you feel you need to make publicly because putting it in the record is not sufficient, I want to give you a last opportunity to do that now. If there's something you think that ought to be said, if you could take one last moment.
Muy breve.
I'll be very brief.
Se ha hecho bien en no comentar ni aceptar un comentario.
It was very good not to accept comments on presumed or alleged bribes by BCCI, not to these officers mentioned by Mr. Morgenthau, but having to do with the President having accounts in BCCI. In your power, you have records from all the banks, without exception, all the banks mentioned in the reports of Kroll and Bellark, proving that these accounts don't exist. Not only are these from BCCI, but these are from the Sunbelt Bank of Dallas, the Société Générale from France, the Société Santander from Spain.
You're putting in the record things that never came out previously. I mean, none of this was talked about.
Sí, por eso.
Yes.
Pero, señor senador,
Senator,
no se han hablado acá.
They haven't been talked about here, but in the press.
Well, I understand, but we're not here to try to sift out what's been out in the press. And I think the other side very respectfully heeded to my earlier caution. So I think it's really fair not to make this committee now the recipient of any rebuttal of something that hasn't been set forth. So on that note, I would like to, again, I leave the record open for you to submit some of this, but I'm not going to receive it at this point in time, if that's fair. Does that?
De acuerdo, señor senador, voy a concluir.
Very well, I will conclude.
Efectivamente. Esos son temas refutados.
These are matters to be refuted in other bodies. What I would like to say, you asked me what my impression was about this whole BCCI business. My general impression, without admitting any value judgment about this bank, which I see is a bank with multiple evidence of corruption in many parts of the world, but my impression is that when it went to Peru in 1984 and later in 86, this evidence that we have now was not known at that time. BCCI worked in London until 2 weeks ago. It's had offices until last year here in the United States, if I'm not mistaken, in Peru, where it came and surprised people, but the people of the central bank in 1987, on their own initiative, decided to reduce BCCI, their deposits in BCCI. But I think this was a decision which is sort of indicative of what we are seeing now. And I think that here, there's been an attempt to have coincide certain meetings held by the President with BCCI people. I say supposed meetings because they haven't been proven. Nobody knows who this Rizo Patron even is. He's not an officer or an official of the Peruvian government. I don't know who Oscar Rizo Patron even is. Calvo, I don't know who he is either. These people have been mentioned.
Well, let me Let me just say that it's very obvious that BCCI has left investigators in Peru a lot to do, investigators in London a lot to do, investigators in New York and Washington and all around the world. And it's too bad that so much investigative effort is going to have to be consumed by this one enterprise, but obviously it is. I want to thank you very much for also taking the time, and I respect enormously as a fellow parliamentarian your efforts in this, and if there is any further statement you want to submit to the staff here, we'll be happy to receive it. If I could ask the last panel to come forward, I would appreciate it very much.
Solo quiero agradecerle su gentileza.
I just want to thank you for your courtesy
la oportunidad que me ha dado de
and
poner,
for the opportunity you've given me to speak, and I think you've acted with great justice.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that comment very much. Muchas gracias. Did we get the last? Thank you. Sorry to be so long.
Okay, that's Alan García, former Secretary of Defense.
Thank you very much. This is the book. Okay. Thank you very, very much. All right. See you later. Thanks. Somewhere. Where are they? Yeah, I do. I have them right here. Here they are.
Okay, and then there's another list for Mr. Alan.
Where is it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Glad to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
$2 billion. I'll clarify it. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Take care. Thank you. Where did those go, Jonathan?
Was the former Secretary of Defense, which is the sub-ministerial position in the Defense Ministry, and he was also Deputy Foreign Minister Manuel Alfonsín. Jesus Rodriguez was Alfonsín's last economy minister. Jesus has got the beard.
Okay.